Perth's 6PR.
Okay, let's just get to this synagogue fire that was deliberately lit last night in Ripponlea in Melbourne's southeast. Now, I've got on the line Dr. Dvir Abramovich, who's the chair of the Anti-Defamation Commission, who joins me. Thanks for your time, Dvir.
Good to be with you, Gary.
Just first up, what I'll do, if you don't mind, because I know that this probably goes to some of your concerns in terms of the political discourse around all this. So I'll play a bit of Prime Minister Anthony Albanese responding to what's happened overnight. Have a listen.
This is an act of hate, and it's something that should not occur in Australia or anywhere else for that matter. An attack on a synagogue is an act of anti-Semitism by definition. They're liaising at this point. VicPol are the lead organisation at this point,
Sure.
But obviously the nature of this, and this is clearly an act of anti-Semitism.
And Dvir, look, what I'll do, I'll get your reaction to that. Is that strong enough from the Prime Minister?
Look, I commend the Prime Minister for his powerful words and his unequivocal condemnation of this vile, hateful act. And his statement reminds us that we are facing a national crisis of anti-Semitism. But words, no matter how strong, are not enough. And the Jewish community, Gary, especially the Holocaust survivors who built this synagogue and their descendants, and the Jewish community across the country, including in Perth, WA, we need more than sympathy. We need to know that our government will stand shoulder to shoulder with us, not just in moments of crisis when it's obvious that you have to come out and denounce this act of evil, but every single day. And I think this is a defining moment.
Can I ask you, you do live in the area, don't you, around that synagogue? So
I do.
What are you hearing about the severity of the attack and that there was indeed some people inside there? One was taken to hospital, is that correct?
Yeah, look, this is not just an attack on a synagogue. It's personal for me. This is about my family, it's about my community and my city. And it was an attack on the sense of safety and belonging for every Jewish person. I have been living in Australia for 39 years. And I thought that this was a welcoming, safe place for Jews. But this belief, this conviction is being reversed, it's being shattered, it's being undermined on a daily basis. This is a scar on the soul of our city and our nation, and it's an assault on the very idea of what Australia is about and what defines us. It's a very, very sad day for our country.
Look, interesting timing in terms of what happened this week in the UN. Where clearly, the Australian ambassador, under instruction, no doubt, from the Australian government, reversed the decision that they'd supported a long time, which essentially was to vote with a lot of other nations around the idea of the Palestinian state and so on. Right now, it's interesting because the Prime Minister's Office of Israel has actually issued a statement and described what Australia's been doing as flip-flopping and disappointing, and saying that it will encourage terrorism and anti-Semitism. And this has happened overnight. Is there some link to it, do you think?
I don't know if there's a link, but I think, Gary, it's clear that this fire, this despicable act of evil, is not an isolated incident. And to me, it's the horrifying outcome of a climate that we've seen over the last 14 months where anti-Semitism, anti-Israel, anti-Zionism, hate has been allowed to fester unchecked. So the only surprise is that anybody is surprised when you see the rising threats, intimidation, and aggression against the Jewish people. And when you see the reality of what's happening, whereby since October 7th, the floodgates of anti-Jewish bigotry have been thrown open, and the Jewish communities have been drowning in a torrent of hostility, whether it's with rallies, with social media posts dripping with venom, whether it's graffiti defiling sacred spaces, and where the Australian government is voting at the United Nations, but also making diplomatic overtures whereby it seems like they are rewarding Hamas, then this fire isn't just a random act of destruction. It's just a chilling escalation, and it was inevitable.
Well, clearly the opposition don't believe that the Prime Minister has been strong enough in relation to protecting the Jewish community. I'll play you what Peter Dutton has said a short time ago.
It's absolutely abhorrent to see any place of worship attacked. I want to pretend that this wasn't expected or that it couldn't be predicted, but I can't do that to the Australian people. We have seen the rise of anti-Semitism in our community since October 7 of last year in an unprecedented way. Everybody knew that anti-Semitism, that hatred and that vilification, that racism was lurking beneath the surface. But what we've seen on our university campuses, what we've seen online, what we've seen against people of Jewish faith in the community has been completely and utterly unacceptable, and it should be totally condemned in our country. And to see the firebombing of a synagogue, a place of worship, is something that is not welcome and has no place in our country whatsoever. And today we should double down on our support of the Jewish community who will be feeling this very acutely. There are armed guards who are protecting kids at Jewish schools this very day, and that is unacceptable in our country. There is a lot of work and a lot of leadership that needs to be provided to make sure that people of Jewish faith and people right across the country can be given assurances around safety, basic safety requirements when people go to a synagogue or they go to another place of worship, when they go to school, when they go to a supermarket, they should do so safely in our country. And that has been a very, very sad, shocking turn of events in Melbourne overnight. We are an essential ally of Israel. As Defence Minister, I was provided intelligence from Israel which saved the lives of Australian Defence Force personnel. We've averted terrorist attacks on our own people because of our close partnership with Israel. Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East, and they are a key partner to us, and the Jewish migration story to our country has been an incredibly successful one, and one of which we should be incredibly proud. And I will always stand up for people of Jewish faith because they should be treated equally with every other Australian, and the way in which they've been ostracised in our country and the way in which that's been condoned, frankly, by the Prime Minister and others just has no place in our society.
Peter Dutton there. Your reaction to that? Are they the sort of words that you need to hear more of?
Yeah, I don't think we should sugarcoat this. This fire is part of a much larger, more sinister pattern. And the reality is that over the last 14 months, since the Hamas atrocities of October 7th, hate in this country has been given oxygen. We've had anti-Semitic chants in rallies across the country go unchallenged. We've had dangerous rhetoric against anybody who's Jewish or supports Israel or connected to Israel allowed to spread unchecked. And what you ignore, you empower. And I think it's governments across the country that have emboldened those who traffic in fear and division. And this attack is a horrifying consequence of that toxic environment. I have to tell you, Gary, that the dam of hate has been broken and it's flooding every corner of Jewish lives. And I've spoken with young people, I've spoken with Jewish families who told me that they're afraid to wear a Star of David in public. They're afraid to wear a yarmulke. I've talked to parents who told their kids to change their Hebrew Jewish-sounding names on Uber. Can you imagine living with that kind of fear in a country like Australia? And what happened today, it's not just an attack on a Jewish synagogue. It's on the very principles that make this country, that you and I love, a beacon of tolerance and unity. And that's why I say we're now at a crossroads. We're going to allow this hate to continue, this anti-Semitism, or are we going to rise as a nation and say to the government, enough? Because make no mistake, it may begin with the Jews, but it won't end with the Jews.
There's anti-Jewish protests in Melbourne just about every week. I don't know. I mean, you obviously watch that closer than me in terms of how it's being policed. Are they still instances where Hamas flags or Hezbollah flags are being flown?
We've had this in the past, but the weekly anti-Israel demonstrations are continuing. And I just want to send a message to the people who committed this cowardly act on your show. They failed. If they thought they could intimidate the Jewish community or silence us or make us disappear, we are here, stronger and prouder than ever. And to all Australians, I say this, stand with us, because an attack on us is an attack on you too. And we need to rise up as a nation. We need to tell every elected representative that they need to use their voice, they need to use their public profile to come out and to say, we're going to lock shoulders with the Jewish community, we're going to stand with our Jewish brothers and sisters, and we're not going to allow these radical forces who want to burn their place down, who have, taken universities as hostage, who have occupied buildings, who are standing out there and calling Jews who support Israel Nazis. We need to look them straight in the eye and say, anti-Semitism will never find a haven in our country.
All right, just finally, it's being referred to as anti-Semitism, as you just used the term there. Was this, though, an act of terrorism overnight?
That's a good question. I mean, I'm going to leave it up to law enforcement how to define it. But I'll finish by saying this, that this synagogue, Gary, was built by Holocaust survivors. You know, it's a desecration of everything they built. And these are people who saw the worst of humanity. Imagine today how they are feeling, that in Australia of 2024, and let this sink in Australia 2024, synagogues are being burnt down. But amidst the heartbreak area, I feel something very strong, and that is a burning resolve that we will not cower and we will not be silenced.
Dr. Dvir Abramovich, I appreciate you joining us.
I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you again.
And he's the chair of the Anti-Defamation Commission, and as you heard, he lives around the area where this synagogue was set fire to overnight. What is your reaction to that?